Welcome to the BSB Bookathon Fall Edition. We're excited to have you join us for the session. This is an author chat, so we don't have a theme. We're here to entertain ourselves, each other, and hopefully you along the path of the evening. Let's start with maybe brief intros. We didn't discuss this, but I'm going to put Angie on the spot. Tell us about yourself.
I'm a Capricorn. I like walks on the beach. This is my most recent book, After Work. This came out, I don't know, September 1st, I think. I live in Northern California with my wife and a kid and a whole ton of animals, way too many animals. And that's it. I've just been writing. This is my first book, came out in spring, and then my second one just now, or first. So I'm all new to this. Exciting.
Being a newbie is fun and also a little bit terrifying in the grand scheme of things. You are also parent to a new puppy who is ridiculously adorable. If you are not following, Walter has his own Instagram account.
It does. It's
a lot of appearances on here. This is Zoom. This is like when we just sort of chat. We talk over each other. I'm saying Walter has his own Instagram account, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Wally the Cream Golden.
But he's also on yours all the time.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, he's a total attention hog. And he's so cute. It's hard not to just sit there and stare at him and take pictures.
Yeah. He's a total cutie. I enjoy his pictures very much. And I have a feeling you're training him, so he's probably going to be better behaved than Oliver before long.
We're trying. He's gotten to, now he's doing this thing where, well, we have 4 dogs. He's our 4th dog. One of them, though, I mean, he's not going to be around much longer. He's 14 and a half, almost 15. And so that's kind of Wally's coming in to cheer us up. And so all the dogs will be outside and we'll call them all in and they're like, yeah, we're going in, Mom wants us to come in, run in. And Wally will run into a bush and just like peek through the leaves, just like watching us like, no thanks. He's an indoor dog and I think he wants to be outdoor dog more.
It's hard to find that balance of,
because he just goes out and eats all the bushes, and we live next to a regional park, and so our backyard is kind of, it's all fenced in, but it's kind of Northern California regional parkish, and so there's all kinds of trees and like oaks and bushes and stuff, and he's just constantly, I mean, it's acorn season, and so we're just running around after him, pulling acorns out of his mouth constantly.
And you probably don't want those to go down.
No. I mean, it would take a lot to hurt him. A lot of them to hurt him, but yeah, it's not great. He wants to be outside unless he has to poop. Then he likes the indoor toilets better. So that's what we're really working on right now. But,
I swear sometime Oliver saves his poop for when I leave the house so he can like protest that I've left him.
Exactly.
We could probably talk about dogs all night, but that's probably not why most people who are joining us are here. So I will. Okay. I started it. So. I didn't introduce. I'm Aurora Ray, and I'm a little like manic. I think it's because I was in the previous panel, and so I'm sort of like overly on. But I write contemporary romance, much like Angie, and I work at a college during the day. I live in upstate New York. My dog is not much, but not in that charming puppy way. He's more of a fluff nugget of cantankerousness. He was actually in the last panel a lot because he was barking at someone at the end of the driveway, and so he had to be held the whole time like a baby. Let's talk about books and writing, because that's probably that is kind of the premise of what we're doing here. So I'm going to kick off because I'm just taking that prerogative. You happen to be married to a perhaps lesser known author than yourself, Megan OBrien. And I'm really curious about
Angie Williams' wife.
Right? Like that Totally. That's how I know her. Did that influence your decision to write, or were you sort of always a writer and sort of just decided to take the leap kind of independent of that?
It's funny because we've been together for over 15 years, and especially in the beginning, I was a fan before I married her. I was in her Yahoo fan club and everything, and we started. I actually had written something in her Yahoo fan club about my ex-wife, because I was with my ex-wife at the time, and she messaged me and said, "Oh, that's really I really enjoyed what you wrote," and so we kind of started this friendship, and then we became best friends, and then we found ourselves both single later, and and then got together after that. But she, in the beginning of our relationship, so when we got together, none of her books had been published. She was in the process of publishing Infinite Loop. And I knew her from her, I was a fan of hers just from the online stuff she'd written. And anyway, so I was kind of in the beginning of this whole process. Like I think Infinite Loop was just about to be published, and then she was working on editing The Three, which is her second book. And so kind of in the beginning of our relationship, we would write each other, we would give each other a prompt, and then we would write each other a couple pages of whatever, just for fun. If we didn't meet how we met, how would we have met? And so she would write 3 or 4 pages, I'd write 3 or 4 pages, and we would swap them, and it was just like a cheesy little romantic-y type of thing to do. And so we kind of did that in the beginning, and then I didn't really write much, other than those little in the beginning, and I kind of obsessed on my hobbies, and so I just had all these other hobbies I was obsessing on. So then, after a few years ago, she wrote my best friend's wedding. My best friend. She wrote my best friend's sister, and as a birthday gift to me, and I said, I'm going to write you a gift. I'm going to write you a book as a gift. And so, not thinking I was actually going to write the book, so she gave me kind of a basic plot, and then I wrote Mending Fences. And I only intended to write a little bit, and then I just kept going and kept going. I was like, oh, this is pretty fun. I like this. And it, turned into a novel. And so I had it for a couple years. And she, she was like, oh, you should submit it. You should submit it. You never know. I was like, oh, I don't know. Just too scared to do it. And finally, I did. And now it's crazy, because before, it's like when she was writing, she would go up, she writes in the room, like on the bed, hunched over, back hurting. The older she gets, like the harder that is. But I would totally entertain the kids. We had a little kid, when she was writing most of these books. And so I'm like entertaining the kid. He's 15 now. But I'm taking care of the dogs and, doing all the things. And so she could write and totally focus on writing. And now I'm also writing, and especially because we have this project that you're doing a story for, and she and I are both doing stories for it. And this was hard because we didn't have anybody, and then we had a puppy, and then we had a pandemic. And so we had like all of these things going on where there was nobody that could kind of manage things while we had to write. It was crazy. But anyways, that's a very long answer for your
I love the idea of like writing for each other is like kind of a courting, romantic-y, like things for each other. Like that's amazing. Probably go in a book.
It was a good do-over because like I desperately want to be cool, but I just really come across as pretty dorky most of the time. And so, this character that I would write, like for instance, if we didn't meet how we met, how would we meet? Like I could make this person as cool as I wanted. You know, I would have time to like think about what does she say, and she's so suave, and you know, the real life Angie is just like, ugh. You know, but the one I was writing about was pretty cool.
I have to say though, I think there's this, I've gotten to an age where there's a certain charm in like some kind of awkward dorkiness. I've embraced my own and find a certain journey. But is that like, is Bobby like your version of a cool you?
I don't know. Bobby's pretty dorky. Bobby is probably most like me than any of the other things that I've written. Just kind of Bobby's sense of humor, and kind of a tie back to. So Bobby's my one of my main characters in Mending Fences, and just a tie back to growing up. I grew up in West Texas. I grew up on a farm with horses and very involved in that type of thing. And so that part was really fun to write because I was pulling from experiences that I had. Like, Bobby gets into an accident where the cow throws her against the side of the barn because she's not paying attention. Totally happened to me, but with my horse. Same exact thing. My head was just not where it should be. And, breath got knocked out of me. I didn't break any ribs, thankfully, but, just little things like that. What experiences in any of your books that have you pulled?
I think I tend to, I think I've written, I think often our first books always embody
personal things.
He's kind of like, it's sort of your first, and so you kind of pour the most of yourself into it. So I certainly think my very first character in Winter's Harbor, Leah, was sort of me at that time. I had a breakup and was sort of like discovering a new relationship and like that kind of thing. I tend to pull like little snippets, like you did, like experiences that you've had that you can sort of write about. That book, for example, I definitely listen to the Evita soundtrack when I clean the house. It's one of my favorite things. So I think that's sort of fun. As someone who's a sort of baker and a cook, I sort of fold in recipes and things I like into stories. I find sometimes writing, sometimes it's having an experience and pulling it into a story. And then sometimes it's actually crafting a story about an experience you want to have and then justifying doing that as research. When I was writing Autumn's Light, which was sort of the last book in the Cape End series, I totally did like a lobster charter.
Wondered that.
At the time,
I thought you probably had, because it was like written so beautifully. I thought she totally has had this experience.
I totally don't think I could have justified the expense of like a lobster charter, and it was like sea fishing too. But we spent a day with this like third generation lobsterman. Like it was just so much fun, and it was like, oh, it's research. I like totally do this. It's a business expense, so that's fun.
Right.
So we prepped a bunch of questions for each other, but there's some really fun questions coming in through the chat roll. So I want to like maybe we can toggle back and forth. But so this is a fun one. How do you write pets into a story without letting them take over? I sort of, it's funny because I think about this a lot because I write pets into a lot of stories. I've resisted a couple of times, but like not always. And I think it's almost sort of like, I got accused once of actually having a pet in a story that I sort of forgot about. And
That's what I was worried about with Mending Fences.
Do that again. But I think you have to treat pets like they're characters, but they're also, we don't need to know every single time they get walked or fed, just like we don't see our main characters always going to the bathroom, necessarily getting their periods. Like we don't need every sort of detail of them, but they can still sort of come. You treat them like a secondary character that you don't sort of drop in for the moment. They have to sort of be a presence. They don't take over.
Yeah.
That's the answer to that, at least.
I've like with Mending Fences, because Riley was such a, it starts out where Riley is trapped in this fence and Bobby comes across her and takes her to the vet. So she's kind of the catalyst for them getting together, and then Bobby has to keep taking her back to the vet, and Grace is her vet. And And so that was something I didn't want to just have this dog show up and get them together and then you never see the dog again. So I ended up making Riley kind of Bobby's confidant, like she works out, she talks about it. Because I talked to my dog, and when I was a kid, I had a pony, and that pony should have been paid therapy fees. I mean, I would just ride that pony all day long, telling the pony all about how sucky middle school was, like that. That's what pets are for. They're good listeners. They don't talk back. They're always on your side. And so I tried to use Riley as that. Like Riley is kind of her confidant. But yeah, it's hard to remember. Like when the character goes home, there's a dog there. Like if she brings the other character home, you can't forget there's a dog, but you don't want to make it all about you. Like you don't want to break the romance and be like, okay, I have to take it out to potty. Like you want to.
Yeah, that's extra tricky with sleepovers, right? If the character goes, like if they leave their dog overnight, like if they have a spontaneous hookup sleepover, like someone has to have let the dog out.
Right, and like you don't necessarily want to write that the dog is just sitting there staring at the people having sex with each other.
So some kind of relief, but maybe not. Yeah, I think it's that. I think it's nice that like even more than a best friend sometimes, that idea of the confidant and the fact that you can say something to your pet that you literally wouldn't say out loud to.
Oh yeah, there's no judgment.
Yeah. I don't know. Oliver judges me a lot. I don't really know. It's usually not about what I say, but I feel like he judges me regularly.
Yeah, but he doesn't say anything. That's the important part.
That's true.
Silent.
Like romantic choice. So, well, sometimes. Well, that's another chat. Okay. So this one's fun. What's your writing background? Do you have a background in English, creative writing, or did you just decide to start writing?
Yeah, I just really decided to start writing. I actually hated English in school. I know, sorry. I wrote, little things here and there. I actually had an extremely supportive English teacher in high school who encouraged me to write. She encouraged me to write a novel when I was in school. She got me to be she took me to journalism camp and encouraged me to be on the newspaper staff, and really kind of made it fun. It's amazing how teachers can do that. Something that you never enjoyed, and then you have this great teacher, and all of a sudden you're excited about it. But yeah, I'm a reader, and so I think for me that's kind of like when you're reading things, you can't help but think, oh, I wouldn't have done that, or oh, I love how this author did that.
No, I think that's true, and I think being an avid reader is probably one of the single best kind of things that you can do to be a better writer. I actually feel kind of unusual in that, like, that is my background. My undergraduate degree is English, my master's degree is English. Between undergrad and grad school, and then being able to take classes at the college where I worked, I've probably taken 7 or 8 credit-bearing creative writing classes throughout my life. I'm a bit of a craft junkie. Like, I love thinking about like the craft of writing, and I think for me it was actually a harder. I wanted to be a writer, and then I kind of forgot I wanted to be a writer for a really long time. I got a job, I was in a relationship, I just sort of forgot. And then I remembered, and for me, it was actually I always joke that it was harder to come out as a romance novelist than it was to come out as queer. Because, if you do come from that sort of like literary tradition, like romance is often not taken very seriously. And I can, I've written graduate papers on the legitimacy of romance and like how it's like by women, for women, about women, like in most cases, but I still had this like hang up about writing it. And so like giving myself permission to write what I loved and what I wanted to read was kind of this magical turning point.
Yeah, it's funny because I kind of had, because I'm married to an author, and I'm so incredibly proud of her, and I tell everybody about her, and she's so shy, like she never self-promotes, and so she's much more, and I'm just like, I'm married to an author, and she writes lesbian novels, and telling like literally just people in the grocery store, and they're writing down, oh, what's her name? Where can I find her book? So then now that I'm an author, it's funny because I'm not like ashamed about it. I mean, of course, I'm proud of it. I'm super proud of it, but I still don't find it as easy to talk about as Megan.
Yeah.
It's weird. I think also it's weird when you're married to like Megan OBrien, it's like, but she is so supportive.
Yeah, I think self-promotion's tricky no matter what. But it is, I think, sort of like being a like writer couple powerhouse is kind of fun. There's something kind of cool to that.
She's handy because she's very honest with me, which is good. I mean, she's not mean about it, but she's very honest with me. So, I could say to her, I was thinking maybe, this would happen because I'm trying to get here. And so I'm thinking maybe I want to do this. She's like, no, that's not, no.
Honestly, like that's
tell me what to do, but she tells me what not to do. That's good enough.
That's really important. Well, while we're on the topic of Megan, I don't want to like monopolize the question asking. I do think it's sort of a good segue to talk about, I think, why we were paired together, which is that we are part of a threesome, if you will, working on a new novella collection for Bold Strokes. I have the privilege of being sandwiched between this powerhouse couple in a novella anthology that's coming out next summer called Opposites Attract, Butch Femme Novellas. And I'm assuming we couldn't get Megan to join because she doesn't like public speaking in any capacity.
A very serious conversation with our son, too. I can hear them in the other room. She's 15.
Because who would watch the children and the animals if you were both?
Exactly.
So it's really exciting. I just started my edits on what's yours about?
Mine is called Just As I Am, and it's about, it's funny because, so the theme of the whole thing is butch femme romances. And mine is about someone who, identifies as a butch, but doesn't have necessarily all of the traditional, like, butch things that you would think about, like building things and being handy with tools and stuff like that, like the stereotype of a butch. She doesn't really identify in that way, and so she has before the story, she's in a relationship with someone who judges her for not being the person that they think she should be. Like, she's not butch enough. She's not, not fitting this mold that person thinks she should fit. And so then when the story starts, she has been talking back and forth with somebody online, and they're going on their first date, and everything's going beautifully, and then something happens that makes her feel, it kind of brings back those feelings of inadequacy, and she reacts badly, and then so then the other person who's femme is like, what do I do with this? Like, is this who this person is? It doesn't seem like, the times that we talked before this isn't the impression I got of this person. Do I give this person another chance? And and Dylan, who's the butch, is, she's begging Carrie let's start over, give me another chance. And so then, the rest of the story is them kind of working through that. Dylan working through her insecurities, and Carrie being there for her, and giving her a chance. And yeah, it's different from my typical butch character that I write, just because I think all characters have insecurities, and it's good to write those insecurities into a character, but it's like such a weird line with how do I write these insecurities but still make this person appealing?
Yeah, I completely agree. That's, I think, one of the biggest challenges is to make someone super appealing, but vulnerable, and kind of give them both sides of it. I like that you turned a little bit of the butch stereotype on its head. I think sometimes there's a tendency, and I write pretty much exclusively butch femme romances. Like, I think there's a tendency to play into some of those like alpha butch stereotypes. And I think sometimes there's a certain appeal to that, but I think people are so much more dimensional than that. I know in Twice Shy, which is my sort of latest title, like, I really went for someone who sort of had to come into her own. Like, she's recently divorced, and I think is still reeling from that, and a lot of that insecurity. She's lost her, for lack of a better word, swagger. Which isn't arrogance necessarily, but there's a certain confidence that can be super attractive in a butch character. And I'm excited to read this. I haven't read Last Resort yet, but Mending Fences was great. I feel like, the way you crafted Bobby's character was that, which was a lot of things that we often love about butch characters, but with a certain softness and sensitivity that does that really well.
I like butch characters that are emotionally vulnerable.
Yeah,
because I think that it's a hard thing to come across as totally confident, but then also not totally confident, but confident, but then also be vulnerable and not be a jerk, not come across like misogynistic, and
totally.
And what's yours? Yours is set in your home state.
Yeah, this one's set in New Orleans. It's called Follow Her Lead. And I took an otherwise super confident butch character, but threw her into one arena where she feels really, really not confident. She's named Majesty of this lesbian Mardi Gras crew. And part of the gig of that is doing kind of the formal official opening dance at the ball. And she doesn't dance. She's old school, like Southern money, but she went to finishing school and she had to take dance lessons as the follower with like the sweaty. And so she's this super successful, confident venture capitalist. But she has to go get dance lessons so that she doesn't embarrass herself at the ball. And so it's the story of her working with her dance instructor, who she sort of cajoles into being her date for the ball, so that she doesn't have to like find another person who can dance with her, that they can just practice together. And so it is kind of fun to play with that. Who's confident, but in what arenas? Because I think we all have those areas where we feel really confident, and then some places where maybe not so much.
I love really like feminine characters that are, very confident. But I just think that balance is so attractive.
Yeah, you're so right. I love this novella collection is called Opposites Attract, which I think sort of hints at the idea of like the butch and femme kind of dichotomy. But I think story, but yeah, like writing it is sort of like how else, like I have this sort of like stuffy old school money character with this kind of free spirit, kind of just embrace life's adventures kind of type, right? Like how can you play with all of those different juxtapositions?
I just actually finished reading Twice Shy for the second time. It was twice as good the second time.
That's really sweet. Thank you. I have Last Resort queued up. I have not. I took on new work in my day job, and pleasure reading has not been something.
Me too.
Like right, yeah. Like.
Well, Twice Shy is an audiobook.
Oh, right. Like I need to. I feel like the last person on the planet who does not do audiobooks.
Well, I like to read. Like I prefer reading because then the voices are your own, and you know. But I recently got a promotion at work, and so I've been just, you know, like grind. And luckily, I'm doing something right now where I can listen to something while I'm working, and so that's when I listened to it. You know, while I was working along. I read it before. It's interesting too. You pick up different things. I think when you read something and then you listen, you pick up different things that you miss. I mean, you pick up things every time you read something, you know. But listening is a different experience.
Yeah, I should probably give them more a try. Podcasts either, really. It's kind of funny. Like if I have something on, it's like music or NPR. That's kind of like those are my jams.
Yeah. My wife listens to video game podcasts all the time. I don't know how it happened. I don't know. She's
takes all kinds. I feel like I've been jeopardizing the question asking. There are a couple more in the Q&A box, but you did some fun questions. So if you want to ask, and then I have a couple that I definitely want to ask you.
Yeah. I've been reading, like Megan recommended that I read Stein on Writing by Saul Stein, which I highly recommend. I'm in the process of writing another book right now. It's set in Alaska, and I have like 3 chapters in, and then after reading, I'm about halfway through Stein on Writing. After reading it, and you're talking about craft stuff, like, I'm like, oh my God, I gotta completely rewrite this, the beginning of this book, like, you know, the first page. But do you have books that you recommend for new authors that kind of struck a chord with you?
Yeah, it's funny. I think so many of my writing classes like happened so long ago. I don't sort of think about them too much. Lee Hayes just recommended to me The Emotional Craft of Fiction because it kind of does this kind of like layering of emotion, like going like 3 layers deep, which I think is really fascinating. And I think, you know, you can't do that in every scene, but I think, you know, picking up kind of tactics like that you can work in are good. I haven't read it yet, so I can't swear by it, but she recommends it. My go-to, and something that I use in pretty much every book I write as part of my, I'm not a super intense outliner, but I do a rough outline. There's a book called Romancing the Beat by Hayes. And I went to a seminar by her, and it's a super short, it's probably like a 50-page little booklet. Like it's not that long, but it's actually specific romance writers. And it's, like it kind of breaks a romance novel down into 4 parts, 4 acts, and then each act has 4 or 5 beats to it. And the beat might be multiple chapters. The beat might be 2 sentences. It's not like it's super formulaic, but what I have found is that when I write a story, I then go back and like superimpose, like I filter it into the beats. And if there's something missing, like, oh, that, like, or if I'm stuck, like, oh, that's what's missing. I missed that beat. And what's really funny is that she actually, for her example, she uses the movie Grease, which I actually don't, I'm gonna like lose readers of this. I'm not a big fan of. Like,
you like the original Grease?
Yeah.
Oh my God. See, Olivia Newton-John in the original Grease is possibly why I'm a lesbian. She was absolutely, I was obsessed with her. I like everything I could find on her. I watched, and in the end, like she's like this girl next door, and then in the end, when she's all in the black and like smoking a cigarette, and I was like, oh my God.
The entire chat roll agrees with you. So it's
what's that?
The entire chat roll agrees with you.
Right?
I think it's because I'm attracted to butches. So like Olivia Newton-John didn't do it for me, and John Travolta, like, well, not sorry.
Totally.
Not be this opinionated, but like it's okay. Okay, everyone's in love with Grease. Oh, look, one person doesn't like.
So, Joe in Facts of Life.
Oh, okay. Total
Right?
swoon. Yes.
Yeah, that's Megan too. Megan's like, oh.
Yes, please.
I mean, I love Joe, but I wasn't necessarily attracted to Joe. I just thought.
No, like, do you want her or do you want to be her?
Right. I didn't necessarily want to kiss her, but I totally wanted to be her.
Okay. Blair, Natalie, Tootie, like who'd you crush on? Be honest.
I don't know. That's hard. Probably, honestly, maybe Natalie. Because she's so funny, and like I loved Natalie. I love like I don't know if it was necessarily crushing on her or what, but I definitely loved, like, would totally hang out with both Tootie and Natalie. I want to be part of that group.
I love that. I appreciate that because I think there's like the part of me that wanted to be Blair, but really felt like Natalie most of the time.
Blair kind of scared me. Which now, probably as an adult, I'd be like, oh, Blair, I'm going to be, kind of take charge. That's interesting. But, as a kid, I was like, oh, she might be mean to me, Now
It's like girls, right? Like, when I was little, I kind of wanted to be Blanche, but I was really Dorothy. Like,
yeah,
a little bit of Rose thrown in. That's fun.
Yeah. Megan says I'm Rose, and I feel like I'm offended by that. I love Rose so much, but just my Southern stories that I tell her, and yeah. I don't think I'm that dingy. But oh yeah, Stalker Channing too, and
yeah, I could get behind that. Okay, first I want to address all the questions. So there's a question in the Q&A about writing in the pet's point of view, which to me sounds adorable, but like I could never pull off for a whole book. So I'm going to answer that very briefly. Angie, do you have thoughts on that?
I do. And this is my thought on that. Animals that talk completely freak me the hell out. Like, you can ask Megan, I can't do it. I cannot watch commercials where they talk. I can't watch movies where they talk. We were just watching Upload the last couple nights. We binged Upload. And there's a therapist in this digital heaven that they go to that is a lab. And I'm like, oh, cute. He starts talking. I can't watch it. I turned away. I couldn't even watch it. Megan's cracking up, texting all of her friends, telling them that, I can't watch it because there's a talking dog. It freaks me out. I don't like it.
But what if it's just in their point of view? They don't actually talk, but they just kind of observe. Too close.
I don't mind somebody saying, oh, Wally thinks you have a problem, or, Wally, what I mean? I don't mind a human, speaking for a dog, but I don't know why. It's mostly in movies, though, where they move their mouths and they're, talking.
Well, Hart has strong opinions that you should read The Fur Person. I do think I have seen stories where sort of you see it through the eyes of the animal, even though they're not, they're just sort of observing what their humans are doing.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting. I don't know if I could pull off a whole novel in that way, but it has some sort of coolness to it. What do you do to tighten up a sagging plot?
What do you do?
I'm going to just take some notes. You do. I think it's every single scene in a story has to accomplish something. Mm-hmm. Character development, moving the romance forward, creating tension. If it doesn't accomplish something, it probably doesn't belong. I I always said I'm going to post this, and I never had. Maybe I'll finally get around to it. I cut an entire chapter out of Spring's Wake. And it was a Christmas scene. It was like each character kind of having Christmas Day with their respective families. And it was like cute and kind of charming. It accomplished nothing. The entire like 20,000 word chapter had to go. I think that's what it is that you have to kill your darlings, right? Like if you've written a lovely, fun scene, but it doesn't accomplish anything, you either need to make it accomplish something or it's gotta go.
Yeah, so much got cut from Mending Fences. I mean, I had this whole thing where the mom has a heart attack, and and then Grace has to like be there for Bobby, and my editor's like, no, you don't need any of that. You need to come back onto the page here and get back into the lane. But Megan will tell me that too. Like I'll have these whole conversations where the main character's having this whole conversation with another character, and she's like, how is this advancing anything? Like if this conversation is giving insight into the character, then that's good. But if it's just some random conversation, no matter how funny you think it is, like you gotta get rid of it.
Yeah.
That you need, and
yeah. You're completely right. And wants to know what a sagging plot is, and it's just that. It's the part of the book where you get bored and you put it down.
Yeah.
You come back, but you're kind of bored, so you maybe flip a few pages ahead.
Well, this is exactly why Battlestar Galactica is the best television show ever made, because every single episode moves the plot forward. Nothing is wasted. They tell a story in 4 seasons, wrapped up.
I feel like we could go down a whole rabbit hole there. I don't watch sci-fi. I'm gonna moderate us right now, and I'm gonna put it in because we have 5 minutes left. And Rach Byrne wants to know what we're working on now, and that should be one of our wrap-up questions anyway. Oh, yeah. I feel very bossy this panel. I hope you don't.
You've asked me a lot. I've talked a lot, and I haven't asked you anything.
No, but I've pulled questions from the Q&A. I have my work set up, so I have like my laptop, but then also 2 monitors, so I keep like looking, but I can do everything at once.
You're better at the multitasking thing.
It's because I usually answer email during Zoom meetings during my day job. Angie, what are you working on now?
I'm actually working on, and I was in a thing a while ago about another panel, and we were talking about somebody like, oh, I want something about birds, which seems random, but I'm actually writing something about an ornithologist who has kind of grown up with her father, who was a biologist looking for this bird that is thought to be extinct. And now there are reports that this bird has been sighted in Alaska. So she goes to Alaska and is paired with the ranger who got the report. And the ranger kind of takes her in the Alaskan wilderness to look for this bird or any kind of sign of this bird. And spoiler alert, they're gonna like totally do it and fall in love. What are you working on?
But can I pause for a second? Just say, like, I can't wait to read that, because since the pandemic, I've been working from home, and I've set up this is like my little dining room. It's not really a room, it's a nook. But I put a bird feeder right outside my window, and I love watching the birds. But I had a like rose-breasted grosbeak, which are pretty rare around here, and I just sort of was like, oh, what is that? And I have like the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and I'm like, I've totally nerded out on birds, so I'm excited.
Awesome. I'm gonna write this for you.
I can't wait. I am working on edits for a book I have out in the spring. It's a second chance romance, high school sweethearts who come back together 10 years later.
I love those. I'm a sucker for those.
Right? I've not done that before. And this is one of the characters went off to college, and the character who stayed home actually had a hookup and had a kid from it, which is kind of what precipitated their breakup. And so this is sort of their chance to come back together. And I am doing 2 collaboration books with Janie Clevenger, who's an author with Bella Books. one is going to come out from Bold Strokes, one's going to come out from Bella. Both are coming out next November, and they're sort of shared world, and they actually unfold concurrently. So it's not like a series you read one before the other, like they kind of unfold at the same time, which is proving a little tricky.
Yeah, I bet.
But it's super, super fun. I've never done a collaboration before. And I really enjoy sort of the momentum you get from like being able to, I don't write in order, which is not a good habit. I don't recommend it. But when you write with someone else, you have to write in order. So it's been very good.
That sounds great. She's great. So that's going to be fun.
We have 1 minute left. I really want to ask you the James Lipton pivot questions. I probably shouldn't though, because we only have 1 minute. Can you answer them really, really fast?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the James Lipton pivot questions?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so if you haven't watched Inside the Actors Studio, James Lipton ends every interview like this, and I don't know, it makes me feel really cool to ask them. So rapid fire. What is your favorite word?
What's my favorite word?
Mm-hmm.
Puppy.
What?
Puppy.
Oh, what's your least favorite word?
Oh man, work.
What turns you on?
Fins.
What turns you off?
Work.
What's your favorite curse word?
Fuck.
What noise or sound do you love?
Ocean.
What noise or sound do you hate?
Like a clicking, a random clicking. I don't know where it is or why it's doing it.
What profession other than yours would you have if you could?
Photographer, hands down.
What profession would you never like to do?
Programmer. That's what my wife is. So freaking boring. And then they have these meetings, and I'm just like, oh my God, they're boring.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive?
Good job.
Thank you for indulging me, but we don't have time to turn them around.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight. It was so fun. The questions and the commentary was delightful. Have a fantastic night, Angie. It was a pleasure. I hope we can make it soon. Thank you so much, and take care. Have a great weekend.